one of the first people that I sought advice from said, your business partner is your second most important relationship in your life behind your one.
Jack, did you feel pressure being Sam's brother when you came into the business?
No, I'd love to sit there and go, I had this, vision that I was going to be really useful for you both. Actually, it was just about taking a risk.
I think I would struggle to trust a 25-year-old to do what I would need to trust someone in that position to do.
Where's your skill? Where's your experience? Where is that going?
I remember being like, Drag, mate, you're going to have to put something in. I got anything and you're going to have to put something in.
It's like, rent's due. I'm like, okay.
Hello and welcome to our brand new podcast, The Scale Up. My name's Jack. I'm here with Drag and Sam, and we're here to talk everything about scaling a business. So why the scale up? We're a business that's been around for 6 years now. We're kind of through that startup phase and into the real kind of growth side of our journey. And we have found certainly around this phase that there isn't a lot of information online and out there and kind of expertise to lean into. And we want to share our journey as we go and hopefully open it up to others to share theirs as well. So to kick off, I thought we could start with our founders, who are Drag and Sam, who are here today, and give us a little bit of an insight to the very beginning, scaling right back to the start, and why you left your full-time jobs in the IT industry to go on a venture together.
Okay, well, I can start on that one. Both Sam and I have been working together for probably over 10, 15 years. And we used to work in another MSP. I was there for quite a long time. There was an option for kind of a management buyout. That didn't materialize. And then Sam handed his notice in for various reasons and decided
just to cut in on that one. I was planning on going and living in another country for a good while.
Yes.
And my now wife is still not particularly happy with the decision I made of staying.
Well, you shouldn't. Yeah, my wife isn't happy with the fact that I'm still in this country. But anyway,
Yeah.
So the plan was Sam was going to go to Spain and live there for a year and do kind of contracting. And then I said, hey, how about you don't go to Spain and we start something up together? It wasn't kind of a planned, we're going to start a business. It was more the fact that something didn't materialize in the previous company. And then Sam was like, I'm going to start a new journey. I'm going to go off and live in Spain. So
yeah,
I thought,
and like to cut in on that, from my perspective at that point, like the kind of life journey that I'd set out that I wanted to follow was for, 25 years old at that point in time.
I'd say not now.
Yeah, not now, definitely not now. And I thought, well, you know what, let's go and experience all there is to life, go and get out there and do something different. The contract and IT work that you mentioned, like it was, instead of doing bar work in Spain, it was let's tick over some level of cost and just do enough that keep the lights on, keep some income coming in and do all of those things. And the IT question as to, what I wanted to do in the future was very much, I want to do that in my 40s.
Yeah. What, contracting?
No, the contracting, keeping the lights on, the running a business, what we're doing now.
Yeah.
I always thought, I do want to do it.
Did you want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All along?
Always wanted to do it all along, just not at that stage in life.
Yeah, okay.
And like for me, when you came with that proposition, I thought, I do want to do this, but now's too early.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the main reason that I took you up on it was to be behind your image.
Are you trying to say
I'm
old now? Okay. I like that.
From a practical perspective,
26,
yes,
that.
you are 26,
still,
but from a practical perspective, you are older and it does bring that image.
Yeah.
So,
that was your worry before, wasn't it? The fact that because you're so young, no one will take you seriously, but they don't know how much you actually know.
Yeah, and that's definitely still true now. We've had clients in here, even in the past 3 months, where they've gone, hold on a minute, I thought you guys, meaning me and Jack, were older than Drag.
Yeah.
Nope.
You look it though.
Well, depends on what light. And now that I have a child, it feels it at times.
I've not had the you're older. I've had the you're directors.
Yeah.
More that side.
I remember that was the kind of worry you had before when you go into clients, they're not going to take you seriously. Even I remember when you're saying, don't tell them I'm a director. I don't want them to know. They're not going to take me seriously otherwise.
Yeah.
Just tell them I'm just an employee.
Yeah.
So how much of that really is reality versus kind of in your head as a young person going into those kind of conversations?
I mean, it's difficult to know because you don't ever get a test the reverse. So, but if you're asking for my opinion on it, I think I would also have those reservations as well. So I think I would struggle to trust a 25-year-old to do what I would need to trust someone in that position to do. At the end of the day, like, our clients place so much trust. And, you know, you ran the ad campaign that 60% of SMEs go out of business after a cyber breach. And then on top of that, I think we posted another statistic the other day that was 50% of SMEs have them every year. So just like, you know, running those two figures together shows you that how much trust those organizations are placing in us to do the right thing. So would I trust the keys of the kingdom, the everything, to a 25-year-old?
But that's the same as kind of any kind of job, isn't it? Like, even if you had a plumber who's 20-year-old versus someone who's, say, 40 years old, you're going to have more faith, kind of, the person who's older. Not saying that they're better.
Of course, but would I hire a 25-year-old plumber? Yeah, because what's the extent of the damage they can do?
Yeah, but
like, you know, the extent of the damage that we can do.
Yeah, that's true. But then you're not a normal 25-year-old.
I think that's the biggest thing for me.
mean?
I've had people contact me on LinkedIn who are young and want to start a business in our industry. And the last thing that I want to do is say, you know, you can't do that. You don't have the experience level, the contacts level, the certifications, all of the things that you're going to need to be a successful IT provider in the day and age that we live in at the moment. But it is kind of a little bit of the case. And I know there's a lot at the moment, particularly talking around ageism, and, you know, that is not a factor with whether somebody can do a job. And I absolutely agree with that. And there are exceptions to every rule. But there is still a level of experience that you need to have with the industry that we're in. And, you know, we're discussing this podcast, and it's not necessarily talking about our industry. We definitely want to hear from businesses across all industries. So this might not be relevant to everybody.
Who have you had before, though? Which industries is it mainly MSPs, or is it just
contacting me?
Yeah,
MSPs.
Is it mainly MSPs?
You know, like Sam said there, I don't think every industry necessarily needs somebody who has X amount of experience, but certainly in ours is something that, you know, you really do need to know what you're doing, and sometimes that only comes with a level of experience, I guess.
Yeah, and, you know, Drag's example of a plumber in that sense is, you know, perfect. If I'm also trusting someone to just deliver a good at a certain time or any of those things, great. But if I'm doing something for you that can literally take your business out instantaneously, it's a whole different ballgame.
It is, yeah.
Well, yeah. So if we go back to that kind of original point, I suppose we're digressing a little bit, but the combination of the two factors that you had, where Sam was pushing his technical ability to be, and where he was in your experience and kind of demeanor and how you could come across with clients, made for a good partnership that you were able to kind of hit the ground running a little bit when you started up.
I genuinely think, like, I wouldn't go as yin and yang because we're not polar opposites, but they are like complementary factors. And at that point in life, you know, I remember being, you know, you have those visceral moments, but as a 25-year-old, I put a lot of stock in the expression of age brings a lot of unearned respect. And the older that I get, the more I realize that respect is actually earned.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of stock and experience that when you're young goes underrated, but when you get older and you've seen a lot more things, you start to place a lot more weight in them.
Do you think age necessarily defines capability, or do you think there's a kind of a way around that?
I don't think age defines that, but I do think that exposure defines that. I can spend 10 years. In fact, you know what? I got my hair cut today, and the barber said the perfect thing, which was, I asked him, how long does it take to become a good barber? And he said, entirely depends what you're doing. If I spend 5 years practicing something wrong, never going to be good. If I spend 18 months gradually moving and gradually adapting and learning and in the process, you'll be good. So I don't think that age brings either experience or aptitude, but I do think that exposure does. And I think that's down to an individual as to how much they're willing to work to expose. And I don't think that's necessarily directly correlated other than time.
So I guess what we're saying here is you need, in our industry, certainly what we've found is that you need a level of experience and skill, which may or may not come with age. But it can be a factor to getting that level of exposure to really be able to start up a successful business in our sector. I think, to give you an example, I recently went to the business show in London, and a lady came up and said that she was going to be starting her own company. And I asked her what she was in, what sector that was. And she said she wasn't sure yet. And I just remember that striking me of, but where's your skill? Where's your experience? Where is that going? And I think I see a lot at the moment where we are encouraging often young people into starting up businesses, into, giving your dreams a go. But like I say, it is massively sector dependent, but there's also a level of almost disrespect that we're giving to people who are maybe even in their 30s, 40s, even in their 50s, that have gained a load of skill, have gained a load of experience. And that is so translatable to starting your own business. It doesn't have to be just because you're young, you can give it a shot and then you try again and again. There is a level of experience with that you might have and skills that you can bring into starting your own business, like you both have, that actually you weren't starting straight away. You had gone and done 20 years in the industry, 6, 7, 8 years in the industry, combine that talent. And that's maybe one of the reasons you.
Yeah. And it literally is. So that is literally the premise of the E-Myth, that book by Michael Ruber. I can't remember his name fully, but, and it's how, without regurgitating someone else's information and spending too long on it, but it's how we believe that entrepreneurs are people who, randomly go out and start these businesses and they pick a random industry, and what defines them is their entrepreneurism rather than they are actually a technician turned manager. So the majority of people who start businesses are actually people who were good in businesses before, doing the same things, but now their role within that business has changed from the doer to the manager. And I think what defines you as someone who's going to get that off the ground and get that going is, are you good enough to do it on your own? One, are you reliant on other people in the business? Are you reliant on the wider business?
That's what I would struggle with. That's what I said to you before. Sorry to kind of interrupt, but mine was more to start a business. Yes, you can do it on your own, but it's so much easier to have, if you can have someone on the same kind of your wavelength to partner with you, because starting a business up, as we know, is so hard. But having someone there with you, you can bounce ideas off each other. And yeah, I don't know. I just find it's easier to have someone there with you.
I genuinely don't think, and we say this all the time within recruitment and within other areas of a business, no one is bad at everything. And if someone is bad in your organization, then they're doing the wrong thing for you. And in that same ilk, you take it that step further with starting a business. You're not going to be good at 100% of what it takes to run a business. And doing it with someone else means, well, I've only got to cover 50% of the basics.
Yeah.
And therefore, the other person can cover the 50% that I'm not good at. But I think where that's really difficult is finding someone who is the other 50%.
That's the thing. You have to have someone who's on your same...
You're both good at tech.
Same ethos.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But then that won't work.
No. So you need the other strings to your bow, and you can't be both the same strings.
Yeah.
But equally, you need to gel and you need to have a relationship. And, one of the first people that I sought advice from said, your business partner is your second most important relationship in your life behind your wife.
Well, Al said that to me as well, actually.
And 6 years later, it's true.
Yeah.
It genuinely is true.
As long as you're open and transparent with each other from the outset, that's the most important thing. And that's what we have been throughout the whole journey. When it's us, and then obviously when you joined us, it's the amount of times we openly talk to each other, and that's the most important part.
Yeah,
like you got something on your mind. You have to say something what's on your mind. This is bothering me. I want to do this. Okay, rather than let it build up. Because I know some other people have had companies together, and it's fallen apart because they haven't communicated properly.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of one key thing to take away is to communication. If you're annoyed with your business partner, explain to them your reasons. I'm a bit stressed because of X, Y, and Z, because that person's not going to know. And I think that's quite useful to have that open transparency.
Yeah, comms is important, but fundamentally you've got to be aligned. You've got to view the world the same way, and you've got to want the same things. And I know for us, being in different phases of life has sometimes been difficult. You've got your kids, and I've only just started that journey, and you're probably on it soon. Having different being in different phases in life means that the demands that you placed on the business and all of those things are different. So, when we're talking about growth funds and trying to keep things equal and everything else that comes with it, those things do have an impact. And where you've been great is that you've been really, amenable and flexible in terms of those demands. And it's made a big difference to how we can run the business and what we can get out of it.
It's looking at the bigger picture, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going, I guess, back to that initial stage, I suppose businesses either get funding or they start themselves and try to go the organic route. We obviously, or you guys at the time, went down the organic route. Tell me a little bit about your experience with that.
I mean, it wasn't 100% organic. For the first year, I remember Drag being like, "Oh, I'll put £1,000."
It's 1,200.
Was it? Really?
I don't know.
I remember being like, "Drag, mate, you're gonna have to put something in. I got anything, and you're gonna have to put something in."
It's like rent's due. I'm like, okay.
I rent on the office that I forced him to get as well.
That's another thing. So if you're going to start a business up, so Sam and I had a discussion. Why not just work from home, save the money? Because we don't. That was the main problem. Like, we've got no money coming in. We're starting a business up, and then we now have to have all this extra expense. That's my kind of worry. And then Sam made a good point. You're not going to get anyone serious to come to you if you're going to say, "Oh, we just work from our bedrooms," basically, in essence, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were like very different pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I think you could probably get away with it now, but playing back into the earlier conversation of trust and all the rest of it with what our clients demand of us. I mean, it's bad enough as it is where you can just kind of drop and run, but if you haven't even got a premise and all the rest of it, it's just going to come across as, cowboys. And I mean, if we're talking about, I know we're not talking specifically about our industry here, but any low barrier to entry industry like managed service providers within the IT space, where there's no capital expenditure to come into the market, I think anything that you can do to establish some level of presence and permanency is going to play into that straight away.
Well, it came in when we had that 2 clients came over. They said, "Can we come and see you?" If we didn't have any premises, we were like, "Yeah, come to our garage. It's fine."
And how did you fund that from the outset? Fund.
By taking no money from the business.
Yeah.
By everything that comes in stays in. Pretty tight on costs in the beginning.
Yeah.
We had a couple of people like come into the organization very early, who were fantastic and are fantastic people and are still involved in our lives.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say necessarily did us a favor, but definitely wanted to be part of our journey, and I'll be forever grateful for them for making those decisions at that time.
Because it is a risk for anybody who joins a startup, particularly that is
100%.
bootstrapping as such. You see a lot of the, funded companies, they are able to chuck money on nice offices. They're able to chuck money at employees and overpay above the market and all of those kind of things. But organic growth, certainly from the experience I've had so far, is you are tighter on those things, and your selling point is more around the journey and more around the morals of the story, if you like, and what you're trying to get to, and that's what you can lean into.
And whether we've retained the staff or whether they've been and gone, and then on top of that, the clients that we have retained, because our turnover is practically nil. For me personally, they'll always hold a real special place in my heart, because the whole business in general has been transformational for my life. So to have, and I know obviously some of the backing was directly to Drag, and some of it was to me from whoever had that natural affinity. But whatever it was, to know that they trusted and ultimately, I don't want to use like hitch their wagons to that horse or whatever, but viewed that as the way they wanted to take their life at that point. It's like a real big thing for me.
That goes back to my original saying is like, could I have done this by myself? No, 100% no. Could Sam do it by himself? Probably not. That's where it's always nice to have like two people, like-minded kind of people.
And do you know what? You're 100% right, absolutely. But on top of that, I genuinely would not have wanted to do it on my own.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely have enjoyed sharing the journey with Drag and now with you. And the point of life is, challenges, tribulations, everything else that comes with it. I don't know many who want to do that alone. And if they do, it's not for the right reasons.
You can start to see, and it's not everybody, but there might be that tendency of narcissism, kind of trying to build a bit of an empire. And we are doing things differently in the way that we behave from where we want to take this. I guess the one thing that I was going to say back to your point earlier of people joining the journey earlier and how to attract them, because they've got mortgages to pay, they've got risks involved in that you can't necessarily reward them for at that time. I think one of the biggest things that stood out there for me was when I read a book that talked about, people needing to believe in your vision. And that's talked about a lot. You've got to provide your vision for your business, inspire people and those kind of things. But one of the biggest things that's probably missed is that person has to believe in your ability to be able to fulfill that vision. It's two ways. It's not just, I see this great vision, so I'm going to trust you. It's, can they actually deliver that vision?
I kind of agree with that. But equally, I also don't think that a vision is this kind of tangible and demonstrable premonition that is able to be conveyed to someone else. And often people, aren't in leadership roles and aren't seeking to go down that path themselves because they don't want to see what those things are. And they just want to trust that someone else has their best interests at heart and also, as you point out, has the aptitude to fulfill their vision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're looking at your vision and saying, is that directly in line with what I want to achieve? They just go, is this a capable person that is able to not throw me under the bus and execute on what they're trying to do without causing a huge toll on my life?
So I suppose that's a good segue. What was the tolls on your life during those early stages of growth?
Oh, where do we even start? I don't know if we've got a long enough podcast here. So,
well, COVID is important.
But before COVID, it was more the fact that we obviously came from an okay, well-paid kind of job. Coming from that to
you always told me you weren't well paid.
Well, I was lying to you. But seriously. So going from a well-paid job to zero was a massive risk. I had 3 kids, still got 3 kids, but at the time, 3 kids, massive risk. But then I saw potential of what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, anyone else in Drag's position there is, the people knocking on your door on LinkedIn and whatever else are coming to you with, I want to get this business off the ground and running. And again, I'm not going to segue too hard on this, but, I don't know how the office gets it so right every time, but when Michael starts paying up a company and then Oscar's in the car park going, Michael, you won't turn a profit for 5 years. Have you got 5 years of expenses ready to go? Yeah. And Drag came in here and had I don't know what the right word is, but wherewithal to withstand, 2-3 years of no salary.
But I was prepared to do that, though.
But so many people wouldn't be. So many people would come in and be like, right, 6 months in, where's my money? Let's get going.
So to go back to that, some people might look at this and think, well, okay, you must have had a lot of money saved to kind of fund that. But that wasn't the case. I had enough money to survive for, say, 12 to 18 months. But then my wife was working. Luckily, our mortgage wasn't as high as other people have a high mortgage. That did help. But then I knew I would give 12 months, 18 months full at it. And then I remember you saying, it's like, look, this isn't working out because the first 6 months was painful trying to do cold calling. And it just wasn't great for me.
So a question for you then, Drag. Looking back now, so even if you said now, would you do it again?
Yeah, I would. It was hard, but then if you only fast forward 5 years to where I am now and the experience I've had to date, I'll do it 100%.
Let me ask you this as well then. If the business failed,
yeah,
would you do it again?
Oh, that's a tough one. If it failed and I did it with Sam, I'd have to look at why it failed. Is it because of our industry? Is it because we've done something wrong? I think it's a tough question because I would have to evaluate what went wrong. Do you not agree, Sam?
Yeah, but for me, like evaluating why it went wrong would make me think like that was with the views to go again. Like as in, when someone asks me that question, I always think if I was able to kind of parachute back it to that point, would I tread the same path? And for me, I would, because I went into this like 25 years old, having absolutely zero idea of what happens in the inner workings of a company and just, tech, frontline tech, that kind of thing. And now with my position, and I have the IT skills, yes, but I've also gained so much more skill that I now go into businesses where I'm consulting on some level of tech, and I'm able to really put together a bigger picture as to how that feeds into other departments, how that feeds into corporate culture, how that feeds into office politics and how something might come across. So it really just adds so much to what you can deliver because you now have the full picture. As a director of a business, everything is your responsibility.
Yep, no shying away, is there?
Yeah. So I definitely would do it again. And I think no matter what happens here in the long run, and no matter what we do, it's been a life experience that I wouldn't change. And for me, the point of life is to experience as much as possible.
Tell me a little bit about those early stages in terms of when you start to see a little bit of success, more businesses coming in, maybe more inquiries. I don't know what that looked like in terms of staff, but where you start to feel those moments of this is going somewhere. I'm starting to really enjoy this amongst those difficulties with the commercials and the personal sacrifices that you were making.
You want to go on that one? I think I spoke too much, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like clients signing contracts has always been kind of secondary to staff joining. Staff joining has always been the growth measure for me. And I think it's just because we provide, from my viewpoint and from the feedback that I get from staff, like a great environment for them to work in. And that was always like up there as the reason as to why I'm willing to put in the work that I put in, because I genuinely feel that the culture that we create and the lifestyle we afford to our staff is life-changing for them. So the warm, fuzzy feeling that you're referring to has always kind of been when that new hire comes in. And we've joked before that we're running a IT engineer rehabilitation center, and we bring them in and they look a mess, and then suddenly they're kind of 2 or 3 stone lighter and
fix them.
And then
then back to life. Back to the real world.
So for me, the warm fuzzy feeling has always been the new staff joins and then watching their kind of transformational journey. And I know that the clients signing the contracts have always been, the driver behind why that can happen. But yeah, I've just never really put too much stock in it. I think for the first maybe 18 months, we were quite like everyone that signed was a big deal, and it was like let's go for a drink and let's have some food to celebrate and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But as we got more and more into the journey, it became a bit more like
it's normal.
Well, to some extent, yeah. There are still specific organizations that may be from a charitable or sustainability or economic impact, the things that really do set you alight. I know obviously we've worked with some humanitarian causes recently, and those ones still make you go, we're actually making a difference.
It's an interesting angle really, because and we'll skip we'll come on to where I've joined the business and why, but obviously with me leading more on that kind of sales and marketing side, and your job role's almost going away from having to fulfill every part of the business into those technical area and into the account, the kind of existing customer area, there might be a bit of an element of that, of where it's not in your day-to-day anymore. Because if I was sat here personally, I see each win as a big deal, and I think some of the guys in the sales and marketing team would think the same. So it's almost interesting that there probably is a little bit of that, but also a little bit of the bigger we've got, the more it's allowed you to really specialize in the areas of the business where you really want to be.
There's an expression that you need to be 5 different directors in the lifetime of your business. if it's a growing business. And I feel like I've already been 2 or 3. And there's a long way left in this growth journey, hence the Scale Up podcast and
That's why we're here.
trying to share that journey.
Exactly.
But when we started, you're wearing literally all hats and you're kind of jumping all over each other. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're involved in so many different things. And as that grows and you redefine your roles and responsibilities and you start to kind of, you can't have a dog and bark yourself. And if you don't let up on some of that responsibility, you'll be spread so thin that you're doing nothing useful.
So after that initial period, how did you scale from 2 employees up into 8, 9 employees?
Drag, how did we get to where, and I think I know the answer to this question,
Yeah.
but how did we get to where we were when Jack joined?
Before Jack joined, how did we get here?
Yeah. How did we go from 2 people to 10 people? when Jack
Contacts.
joined? Contacts.
That's it, from our contacts. Because most of it was they came to us. The only reason why they came to us because they worked with us.
Right.
So I think it's personal relationships we've had in the past.
I think one of our biggest strengths has been that we will work out anything.
Yeah.
At points we've onboarded clients, a client that's represented 20% of our client base in one go.
Yeah.
And we've just had to scale. And then because of our standing, both as people and as techs, our access to a talent pool has been unrivaled.
Yeah.
I don't think that the majority of people that work here would have gone and worked for anyone else. I think that they would have, anyone else come knocking on the door, it would have been, do you know what? I'm okay here.
Yeah.
And what they actually did was, oh yeah, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
I want to work with that guy.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no bones in it. Our biggest challenge going forward and our biggest strength thus far has been our access to talent.
Yeah, that's been one aspect. Yeah, but then your original question was before Jack started.
Mm-hmm.
What was that question again?
So before Jack started, because he's going to dive into that journey.
Yeah.
But for us to go from 2 to 10,
Yeah.
and at the same time for me to experience severe burnout,
Yeah.
the reason we got there was because we said yes to everything.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything that came through the door that we went, oh, do you know what? Those firewalls? No. Do you know what? That account with those clients? No. We just made anything work.
Yeah.
And as Branson would put it, say yes and then work out how.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So what made you want to join a 10 employee business as an MD?
To be quite honest, I didn't. There wasn't this level of I was waiting to join a small business. I haven't ever worked before this for a small business. I was very much comfortable and used to working in a corporate environment. I had worked in it for my whole career. I knew relatively the ins and outs of how to perform and how to succeed in that environment. And I didn't really ever foresee my skills or experiences being useful in small businesses. I didn't even know what small businesses really did, how they operated. So it wasn't something that I ever foresaw myself doing or particularly wanted to do. But it was only really when Sam and I had the conversation of where his business and your business obviously was in that moment in time at 10 employees, and they were starting to see cracks in the business side of things. And when me and Sam had those conversations, it was very much that, Sam wanted to lean more into the tech and had to lean more into the tech. Tech's been evolving so quickly. Sam didn't have the time or inclination to be able to spread himself across all of those areas, and they performed to the level they needed to be able to grow the business. So, only after those conversations, and I was actually starting to think and reflect and speak to my family, was maybe there's something that I can help with. I've got a degree in business studies. I had that level of experience at how the bigger businesses do things and how they operate. Maybe I could be useful here. And I never really thought it would maybe be at the level of a managing director. I thought, I came in as an operations manager and tried to help you with the operations of running and growing the business, and starting to look at the marketing and sales and branding and operations and finances and support where I could. But ultimately, I didn't know what I'd be able to help you with and what I would be good at. So, I'd love to sit there and go, I had this, vision that I was going to be really useful for you both and that it was going to be this massive success for me. But actually, it was just about taking a risk, and it was about getting out my comfort zone, leaving a job where I'd earned good respect of what I was doing. People, knew me, knew the path I was on, and leaving that world and having no contacts. I didn't even have a LinkedIn. I didn't know this world at all. And taking a gamble and trying to support Sam. And the other angle was he is my brother, and I could see so much hard work that he had put in over the first 5-6 years that was starting to not reward him and unravel and put obscene amounts of pressure onto his life. And there was that element of, look, I can hopefully come and help here. So yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying that was why I joined at that stage.
I think that does come back to the earlier conversation of how, as you grow in your directorship roles and you start to kind of relinquish those responsibilities, I think you want to think that it's a conscious choice, but in reality, you get dragged. And that isn't a pun for any sense, by the way. It's just you need to find. I should start calling you Dragisa instead. But how your natural affinity has always been to relationship management, and that is primarily where you focused on from day one with us, and it's rewarded us. But the business ops side was very much
that's not my bag.
Not my bag.
Yeah, that's why.
Fine, playing to your strengths, great. But one of us had to fill it.
Yeah.
And as a small business, there isn't loads that you need to do. You got to keep the lights on. You got to not embarrass yourself, basically. But as you get bigger, and as I think the analogy we used the other day was almost like a kind of a sphere or a ball, and as it grows, the cracks expand, and then at each phase, you're kind of filling in those cracks again before you expand again. Yeah. And we'd gone from small ball, and there's hardly any visible cracks because there's no surface area, but that ball's been pumped up, and now there are cracks, and if you don't deal with them, they're going to cause you an issue. And that was really where we were in that journey.
Also, when we first started, just you and me, when we did most of the work between us, it got to the stage where, as we alluded, that it was so stressful for Sam and obviously myself to do the MD kind of role. Just wasn't in our nature. It wasn't our thing. I wasn't comfortable doing it. If I tried it, I would know I would have failed at doing it. So bringing in a third person just meant less pressure on Sam, me, and then we'd have to worry about that side of the business. I can concentrate on the clients. Sam can concentrate on the tech. That's what you need to. That's business evolves anyway.
It becomes a business, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It goes from you're running a group of technical people and fulfilling a solution almost.
We used to call it a kind of swollen one-man band. And you go from a swollen one-man band to an actual viable commercial entity. I remember an old expression that someone used to say to me, which was, if your business needs you to work in it, it's not a business. And I genuinely think that you'll never really not have to work in the business, but you go from day to day to month to month. And as a director, you should be working on the month to month, not the day to day.
Jack, did you feel pressure being Sam's brother when you came into the business?
Yeah, definitely. From multiple ways, I think pressure on myself. I didn't want to let Sam down. I didn't want to let the rest of my family down. It's a very public thing with friends, family. It's not just Sam. It's everybody around us that knows that I'm joining his business that he started. And you know that they're never gonna understand the full picture. They're never gonna understand where that's come from and what angle that's been discussed in.
There's definitely like two forms of narrative that I've noticed in our circles, because Jack and I aren't necessarily socially close. We have our own group of friends. We've had our own group of friends that are disparate for a long time, and when they merge and when we see each other in each other's worlds, on my side it's Sam needed Jack's help, and on Jack's side it's Jack's needed Sam's help.
Yeah.
So it's it's an interesting dynamic to watch play out.
The thing is, I remember Sam saying, well, we need to get someone to run the business, i.e. an MD at some point. And then obviously he brought your name up. And I remember Sam saying, who would you rather have in the business? Someone who don't know, take that massive chance, or someone who I trust? And that was the main thing you said, wasn't it? Someone who I can trust.
Given the sacrifices that you've made,
Yeah.
the effort you've put in, there's absolutely no way.
Give it to someone else.
No way. I wouldn't hire an MD. I wouldn't, I wouldn't bring in, unless circumstances dictated that I had to, but there's no scenario where I would have that level of trust in someone else to do that. Because it's
all the hard work, wasn't it, like to build the business up?
Yeah, why would you be willing to just write that off
Yeah.
and go and throw it into a random person
Yeah.
that you don't know from Adam to do that job?
And to go back to your original question, definitely there was a lot of pressure from, like we said, from friends and family who are onlooking, and you feel that pressure. I think there's pressure from myself, like I mentioned before, about not knowing whether I'm actually going to be good at that job role, because I've not been in small businesses. I've not been in IT. I didn't know whether I was going to be a success. I knew I was going to work hard. I knew I was going to try my best, but there's a pressure in the unknown as well. And then, the final point being, you're walking into a company where the other members of staff are going to view it in that way. The guys have been absolutely fantastic with me, but I know,
but
as well as they,
and that's an important point, because had you not been good, they wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And that is, one of the first things DA said to me, 3 weeks in, was, "Oh, Sam's gone with a nepotism hire. Here we go. Who else are you going to bring in? Is his wife going to be in next week?"
Yeah.
And
What he said, was it?
well, in tongue in cheek, but
and it's quite common in.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. But from my perspective, I never had any doubt, and I knew it was the right decision. It was never a concern for me, and I knew it'd be 3 weeks before he's knocking on my door saying, "Coy, it wasn't a nepotism hire." And his wording to me was nepotism hire, and then immediately afterwards was, "Coy, how wrong was I?" He's like you, but he actually is able to communicate. I was like, "Oh yeah, brilliant." Thanks.
But how is it with you working with your brother though? Did you that? The hard part would be working with a family member. It's quite hard, isn't it? My mum always said, "Don't work with your family," but you two work quite closely and well.
But there's a different dynamic in twins, because when you're siblings, you often are in a different phase of life.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing things at different times, whereas for us, we're experiencing things at the same time.
Yeah.
And that then means that you do have to be conscious of what the other person is feeling and how your actions can be perceived on them. I know we had events in our life, like our driving test was one that had quite a not emotional impact, but was quite a time when we both were competing for the same goal. And you do have to be aware. You do have to be conscious of how what you're doing impacts someone else.
I think there's also a level of, we were just used to sharing those experiences. Yeah. And probably when you are younger, they come out in competition and emotions. But as you get older and you're more used to life and you become maturer, but you have all that experience of those shared experiences together. I think that's something that's really, really helped us be able to work together. And, I think our skills complement each other, which helps as well. We're not treading on each other's toes. We're able to communicate and share, but there's still that distinction, and there's still those complementary factors, as well as that trust as well.
Have you found it since going from operations manager to MD, like that kind of journey?
When I started as an operations manager, it was obviously really early in my learnings of both how I'm going to apply myself to the role, but also what the role needed from me and the business. Operations manager in any organization is a pretty broad role. I didn't want to come in with any preconceived ideas, but I also didn't want to come in, and what I see a lot of new starters do in roles is try to add value straight away. And I think that can hamper their longer term success in the role, because they're diving straight into things often around existing knowledge areas that they're trying to apply that doesn't necessarily need applying there. Yeah. And actually it might be something over here that's causing issues that you need to go and learn, and then you need to add that value. And sometimes it is just taking time with that. Sometimes it is just sitting back, trying to understand where you're going to add that value and learning what you need to learn. So, I spent a good 18 months in that role before I moved into the MD role. And I'm really glad I did that time, because I think it showed to everybody that I'm willing to almost do that time. There wasn't a level of, no, I want the glossy title as soon as I'm in the door. But I still think whilst I was during that time, that was kind of always something I was moving towards. I don't think it was a surprise for anybody, but it was almost just proving your worth in the role first.
We've always had an expression, which is anyone can earn whatever they want, but they've got to bring value to the business.
Yeah.
And, the value you need to bring as an operations manager is very different to the value you need to bring commercially as a MD. And to not put a target on your back coming in as an operations manager makes, sets out your stall for here's what I can do. And, if you want to stretch it, then we'll stretch it. But
yeah,
I genuinely think not starting roles with a target on your back and, being probably somewhat aware of the politics of coming into a new role. And, the amount of people you see who come in with the view of, oh, you should change that, you should change that, you should change that, with no awareness as to why those conditions exist. But it wasn't done at their previous place that way.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you got a knockdown from, we can't do it that way because of X, Y, and Z. The amount of times you see it's like regulatory or compliance reasons or whatever that they aren't aware of.
Yeah.
And now not only that, but they've upset the apple cart with their new colleagues and their new managers and whoever else because you just didn't have a level of foresight.
And it just wasn't needed, but it was their skill area.
It was their skill
from previous.
Yeah.
And that's something,
it's well intentioned, but
yeah, it's not needed.
Yeah.
So, that was one of the main things I kind of tried to do then. And moving into the MD role again adds that layer of pressure, because suddenly you become the person on point for the performance of the business ultimately.
Do you feel that now?
Yeah.
You feel you're the chopping block. You're you alone. No other director sits there with you.
No. I feel like it's my role to make sure the performance of the business is where we want it to be.
Right.
That's not to say that the other directors or every single
I was just genuinely interested on it.
I think it's a combined. If it did go wrong, I wouldn't put the blame on you. It'd be a collective. Personally, it'd be a collective thing. Plus, we would have spoke about it way before it did.
I don't think it's about nothing ever. And this is the thing for me. I don't think anything ever goes wrong so catastrophically that it's defined as wrong clearly. Yeah. But I do think that things go wrong all the time. They're not measured. They're not. Did you lose out on that little bit of revenue? Did you lose out on that little bit of growth? Did you not get that little bit of profitability? And those are all the commercial factors. Did you not provide a great onboarding experience for a new member of staff? Did you not see those warning signs of that person going through a difficult time so we could support them as a good employer? There's so many things that go wrong all the time that aren't evaluated.
Yeah, 100%. I think, when I go back to that question you asked, I see myself as the accountable person for everything that happens in the business. That doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm responsible for every single thing that happens in the business. But I see my role as I say, as accountable for the performance and where we want to go as a business.
Yeah.
This episode has been an introduction into BZB and how we've got to where we are today. In the future episodes, we'll be talking about certain topics. So if you have a specific topic area you'd like us to discuss, just drop it in the comments below.